Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Tillawi. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to actually continue with the interview we started last week with Phil Turney, who is a survivor on the USS Liberty that was hit by Israel back in 1967. And with Mark Glenn, they both just published a book written by both of them, Mark Glenn, who is an author, and Phil Turney, who was on the USS Liberty. Now, the anniversary of this, today is June 10th, and so it's the 43rd anniversary of the attack, of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, a United States ship that was deliberately attacked by Israel back in 1967. But today, as a matter of fact, now that's what we talked about last week, and last week we talked about the USS Liberty because it was actually another incident that Israel was involved in a couple of weeks ago when they attacked the Gaza Freedom flotilla that was taking humanitarian supplies to the people of Gaza, who have been under siege for over 3 years now. But today we're going to concentrate on the book that Mark Glenn and Phil Turney have written and published recently. But before we go to our guests and actually talk about the Liberty, we're going to talk about Helen Thomas. Helen Thomas, and I'm sure most of you know who Helen Thomas is by now. She's been all over the news. She's an 89-year-old reporter. She is or was until recently, the Dean of the White House Press Corps. Now, she very much started that job a long time ago, and she actually went through 10 United States presidents, over 50 plus years of service to the people of the United States. As you see her, she is in the Oval Office with John Kennedy, and she was with most president here with Bill Clinton recently. So Helen had served the country for 50 plus years, and she was forced to resign. She lost her job with the Hearst Press Agency because of some comments that she had made. And even though, everyone in the country heard those comments, because it was carried on national TV basically 24 hours a day. And everyone was racing to condemn Helen Thomas for what she said. Even the White House came right out the gate condemning what Helen Thomas said. Now, her comment, of course, even though her comment, you have to take into consideration when the comments were made and how the questions were asked. On May 27th of this year, there was an event at the White House celebrating the Jewish Heritage Day or month or week or something like that. And a rabbi who is known to be very controversial, he made few videos of him dressed up as a Catholic and talking to a reporter. And he demonized Catholics, but you did not hear about that, because that was a Jewish rabbi demonizing Catholics. You have to go to his website and you have to dig for his videos to see what kind of videos this rabbi makes. So she knows that this guy is not all there. And so this guy asked her, we're going to play, you've seen it, but even though you've seen it millions of times on your TV screens, if you were watching especially Fox, I'm sure they did not spare a moment to tell you about how horrible Helen Thomas was. And what gets me, ladies and gentlemen, is Helen Thomas had contributed all this to the country. And for one statement, everyone wants her head. For one statement that she made. Now, and by the way, she apologized. She apologized for that statement she made. You know, the statement that she made, this funny rabbi asked her what she thinks of the Israelis or any comment on Israel. And this is what she said. She said, tell them to get the hell out of Palestine. Now then he went on, because he kind of liked what she said. This is, whoa, big news for this funny rabbi. And Ms. Thomas said, tell them, he said, to go where? He said, and she said, she went on to say, remember, these people are occupied and it's their land. Then he goes, where do we want them to go? And she said, go home. He said, to where? She said, Poland, Germany, the United States. Now, Ms. Thomas understands world history and understands what happened to Palestine. But that's not where Ms. Thomas was going with that. And if you heard some of the commentators, they said, oh, Ms. Thomas wants them to go back to Europe where they were liquefied, where they were made soap out of, where they were killed by, 6 million killed. That's where Ms. Thomas wants them to go. Really? Is that what's going on in Europe now? But you see, when you hear these comments from people who wanted Ms. Thomas's head, they did not tell you that, hey, look, this is just a bunch of BS because there are a lot of Jews in Europe and they run Europe just like they run the United States. So don't worry about the Jews being liquefied in Europe, even if they go back to Germany and Poland and the United States. What she was actually saying, what Ms. Thomas was actually saying, that Israel needs to get the hell out of Palestine, out of the West Bank, out of Palestine, the territories that Israel is already occupying. She wasn't telling them to get out of Israel that they established in 1948, even though if she would have even said that, she would not be inappropriate according to history. Those comments would not be, according to history, those comments would not be inappropriate. But when Israel brought their illegal settlers and settled them in Palestine, that's what she was talking about. She was talking about get those settlers out of Palestine. She said those people are occupied, talking about the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are occupied, and Israel needs to get the hell out of occupied Palestine. She wasn't telling them to go back to the gas chambers as they tried to portray that on TV. She, even with that, even with the circumstances of how she was asked the questions and who was asking the questions, because she knows this funny rabbi. So she gave him an answer to go along with his line of questioning and his line of normally reporting. This is a funny rabbi. But even with that, she came back with an apology and she said, I deeply regret my comments I made last week regarding the Israelis and the Palestinians. They do not reflect my heartfelt belief that peace will come to the Middle East only when all parties recognize the need for mutual respect and tolerance. May that day come soon. But that did not help her. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel had just killed 20 people, civilians. You did not see that story. You did not see that story on your television screens as much as you have seen what she said to that rabbi. Why? Now, what about if she would have said something about Catholics? What about if she would have said something about white people, black people, Muslims, Arabs, Mexicans? If she would have said what about if she said something about God or Jesus? Would the reaction be the way it was? Of course not. But Anytime you say something that has the J word in it, you're gone. Instantly, you're gone. No apologies. They want to make examples out of people. Whatever happened to freedom of speech? Whatever happened to freedom of speech? Didn't this woman have the right to say what she said? Historically, she's correct. Factually, she's correct when she said, tell them to get the hell out of Palestine. But oh no, don't tell the Jews to go back to Germany, because right away, when you say go back to Germany, right away, gas chambers, liquefying. How long is this craziness going to go? Let's go ahead and play. I want to show you how tough this woman is. The first one, when she asked Obama about nuclear bombs and nuclear weapons in the Middle East, and Obama could not even answer her. You know why he could not answer her? Because if he would have answered her, he would have been in more hot water than she was by making these comments. Because the only country in the Middle East that has nuclear power and nuclear weapons is Israel. And he knew it. But he could not even say, when she asked him, do you know of any countries that has nuclear weapons in the Middle East? He could not even answer her. Let's play that, and right after that, you're going to see how the news media covered her comments. So the first clip is when she asked Obama about nuclear weapons, and then the next a couple of very quick clips just to show you how corrupt the media is. Let's go for it.
Washington, D.C. Our special guest today is Helen Thomas. Helen Thomas has been a member of the White House Press Corps for over 58 years. She's covered every president since John F. Kennedy. She was the first female officer of the National Press Club, first female member and president of the White House Correspondents Association, and in 1975 she was the first female member and later became the president of the Gridiron Club. She's written 5 books. Her latest, with co-author Craig Crawford, is Listen Up, Mr. President, Everything You Always Wanted Your President to Know and Do. So you've been telling presidents what to do for like a long time.
They don't take my advice.
Well, here's an example. President Obama, first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So President Obama had his inaugural Helen Thomas question in his first press conference, and here's a little clip we're gonna play from the press conference.
Helen, this is my inaugural moment here. I'm really excited.
Mr. President, do you know of any country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons?
With respect to nuclear weapons, I don't want to speculate. What I know is this.
Speculate.
That if we see a nuclear arms race in a region as volatile as the Middle East, everybody will be in danger. And one of my goals is to prevent nuclear proliferation generally. I think that it's important for the United States, in concert with Russia, to lead the way on this. Okay? All right. Sam Stein, Huffington Post. Where's Sam?
So President Obama really never answered your question about nuclear weapons in the Middle East, and obviously
it would be
you were asking.
pitiful if we took his answer truthfully, because he said I didn't want to speculate. Well, the president is not supposed to speculate as to who has nuclear arms or not. He's supposed to know.
Well, obviously, we know he knows, and this is this great we know, and he knows we know we know.
I was testing his credibility.
So that's it's.
Okay. Now we're going to play how she was covered this week or this past week in the news when she made the comments she made about Israel. Now, before we play that, the United States President said that he doesn't want to speculate who has weapons. You know something? If the United States of America, if the President of the United States of America has to speculate, we are in trouble of who has nuclear weapons. Israel is the only country that has nuclear weapons, but he could not say it. You know, the Security Council, the United Nations Security Council just voted to impose sanctions on Iran, and she does not have nuclear weapons? What about having those same sanctions put on Israel? We can tell Israel, get rid of your 400 nuclear bombs, or we're going to impose the same thing on you. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when we don't play even-handed in the world, this sort of stuff just happens to us. Let's play how she was treated in the news.
I want to go to another story here if we can. This is Helen Thomas caught on tape talking about what she really thinks of the situation with the Palestinians and the Israelis. Here it is.
Tell them to get the hell out of Palestine. Remember, these people are occupied, and it's their land. It's not German, it's not Poland.
So where should they go? What should they do?
They go home.
Where's the home?
Poland.
So the Jews,
Germany.
So the Jews go back to Poland and Germany.
And America and everywhere else.
Laura Flanders, she says that she deeply regrets the comments, and she's also going to retire. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, she apologized for the offensive part of what she said there, and that's more than can be said for a lot of people in our money media. But it has to be, we have to look at this. She would have got less grief, apparently, if she had, shot 9 people dead in the head in international waters. The White House, which came out immediately out of the gate and said Helen Thomas's comments are reprehensible on what Israeli policy has been in this situation, well, they've been much quieter, not so much.
Helen Thomas told me she apologizes for those remarks, that she went over the line, but is that enough?
Well, look, if you or I said it, we wouldn't be sitting here today. That's how serious.
We would lose our
I
jobs.
think we would. That's how serious this is. Now, on one hand, she's been reporting for 60 years or something like that, so maybe she apologized, she's built up some goodwill. But the other thing is, those opinions are so far out of the mainstream of American public opinion, and this is a person who's been delivering news to the public. That makes me wonder about her fairness as a journalist.
So she is a columnist.
She's an opinion writer, and I think she's not the first one to express a view that is repellent to many people.
It is repellent, and I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, my view is oi. I mean, I wish she hadn't said this. I've known Helen for years, and I think well of her, but it was a dumb remark. Pat Buchanan recently had a column saying there were too many Jews on the Supreme Court, and people got in an uproar about that. He didn't apologize. He actually believes that, and I think Helen, is a columnist, and it's not as if, someone with perverted sense of analysis, in your view, Matt, here, is bringing objective news to the public and is duping the public. People know where Helen is coming from. Anyone who's spent any 5 seconds watching her,
This is also somebody.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. Sometimes the reporter becomes the story, unfortunately, and that's the case this week with Helen Thomas. If you don't know Helen, you should. She's been around for the better part of 6 decades. She's covered 10 different United States presidents, but now this might be her enduring legacy, guys.
Yeah, I mean, she's the grande dame of the White House press corps. She's always in the front row. They pay her lots of deference because she's been around since, the printing press was invented. And she's had tremendous staying power. I do applaud Helen. She has had tremendous staying power. But she said something quite controversial. Take a listen to what she said.
Any comments on Israel? We're asking everybody today. Any comments on Israel?
Tell them to get the hell out of Palestine.
Ooh. Any better comments?
Remember, these people are occupied, and it's their land. It's not German, it's not Poland.
So where should they go? What should they do?
They go home.
Where's the home?
Poland.
So the Jews,
Germany.
You think Jews go back to Poland and Germany?
And America and everywhere else.
Spoken with conviction, too. Maybe the biggest problem there.
Her parents are Lebanese. Her parents are Lebanese. Lebanon, obviously part of ancient Palestine. So that's the perspective from which she is saying those comments of Jews to go home.
Not very fair and balanced on her part at all, I would say. Well, she's now apologizing. She says, quote, "I deeply regret my comments I made last week regarding the Israelis and the Palestinians. They do not reflect my heartfelt belief that peace will come to the Mideast. Only when all parties recognize the need for mutual respect and tolerance may that that day comes soon. Well, Ari Fleischer, who's the former press secretary for President Bush, you all know, he says this is not enough, not even close. She should lose her job with Hearst, and he's not alone. Hard to imagine her keeping her job with those comments. I don't know that that explanation will do it for the Jewish
lots
community.
of people, including the Daily News this morning, are calling that lukewarm, her apology.
You know, especially in light of what's going on with Israel. I mean, Israel is basically felt like they're being bashed by the Obama administration. You know, the Netanyahu snubbing at the White House a couple of months ago. Recently, what's going on in Gaza. And then this statement is just absolutely ridiculous that she can come out and just blow it like that and then come back and say, oops, I didn't really mean that. What I really meant was, I hope there's peace in Palestine, Israel, and the Middle East.
She's been outspoken on a few things and controversial. It's hard to see her as objective, but again, she's been around for so long that I also find it hard to believe that they would have her lose her job over this. She has said other things as well. We'll see.
This one's going to get tough to get by. We will have an update on that situation, the blockade, and what's happening in Gaza coming up on the program as well.
All right, in the meantime, here are your headlines.
Okay. So now, did you see the difference in coverage, especially with Fox? Now, Fox at the bottom, they said, Helen tells Jewish people to leave Palestine. Now, that's not really what Helen said. Helen said these people are occupied and the Israelis need to get the hell out. But that's what Fox News covers the news in a unfair and biased news. Anyway, well, ladies and gentlemen, that was about Helen Thomas, and now we are going to go to our guests for tonight, and they are Phil Turney, who is a survivor on the was on the USS Liberty that was attacked back on June 8th, 1967 by the Israelis. And by the way, you do not hear about it on, you know, Helen Thomas says something, you hear about it constantly, and her head is off, but Israel can do anything it needs to do. Did you see what that Fox reporter, when he was talking, oh yeah, you know, Israel has been bashed and snubbed and all this stuff. You know, Netanyahu a couple of months ago, he was snubbed at the White House, but he didn't say anything when Joe Biden got his face slapped in Israel just recently. He didn't say that. He didn't say that Israel did that, but he say that, oh yeah, the Bush administration, the Obama administration is not treating Netanyahu and Israel right. Well, let me welcome my guests who have been waiting patiently on the line. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Hashem. My pleasure to be here. Phil Turney, USS Liberty survivor, and thank you for having us on your show again. I do appreciate it. And I might want to add on this Helen Thomas thing, you know, Helen Thomas has not killed anybody as far as I know. Do you know if she's gone out and murdered anybody or cut their heads off or deprived them of food and water and the basic needs to survive in this very cruel world that they have in the Middle East called a concentration camp with 1,500,000 people that are in dire straits? Boy, Helen hasn't done any of that. She loses her job. I can't figure this one out.
Well, I don't know that she has killed anyone either. Mark Glenn, is Mark with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mark, welcome back to the program. Now, before we get into the book that you and Phil wrote, tell me about this Helen Thomas thing. What do you think?
Well, the interesting thing is you were playing these clips. These two male commentators, one of them said, if you or I made comments like that, we would be out of a job. And keep in mind, Hashem, and all of you listening to this program, whenever anybody dares to suggest that Jewish power in America is such that if people don't toe the line, whether it's in Congress, whether it's in the media, whether it's Mel Gibson, that somehow the Jewish power is going to come back against them in a very formidable way. Well, we're called anti-Semites, and we're called conspiracy theorists, and we're called Nazis in the closet and all that. But yet this is a perfect example of what happens when you get on the Jews' bad side. Now, my personal opinion is that they probably have been planning to get rid of Helen Thomas for a while. She's just been a little bit too rambunctious, the fact that she is Lebanese, that she is very candid about her feelings with regards to who the nuclear terrorist in the Middle East is. They've probably been planning to get rid of her for some time. And they were just waiting for the right moment to pull that ace out of their sleeve. Right now, they needed something to take the people's minds off of the massacre that took place last week in the Mediterranean. And so, and like Phil said, all of a sudden, you have people being butchered, but now we're going to look at this 89-year-old lady because of the truthful comments, historically accurate comments that she made.
Now, you know something? It's amazing also, Mark, when people talked about Helen Thomas, and they will add that, oh, well, she's of a Lebanese descent, as if to say, what do you expect? She's of a Lebanese descent. As if being a Lebanese descent or a Palestinian descent or a Middle Eastern descent is like right away, it's an accusation. Now, historically, she is correct, and she was not. What she was referring to is the Israelis in occupied Palestine, and what is considered occupied Palestine are these illegal settlers in the West Bank. That's what she was referring to, and she made that clear that that's what she was referring to. But isn't it amazing when they bring you all these talking heads on TV, but they never bother, whenever they bring you these talking heads on TV and these people start telling you things about Muslims and things about Arabs and things about Israel, they never tell you that those people are actually Israelis or they're actually Jewish. Why is it when a Muslim man or an Arab man, for that reason, or anyone that resembles Arabs or Muslims, always they will say, oh, he is a Lebanese American. Well, this woman is an American. Helen Thomas. She served for 58 years, and everyone enjoyed what Helen Thomas did. So now they're going to overlook all what Helen Thomas did and cut her head off just for being of a Lebanese descent. Now, if she was Jewish and said that, and by the way, many Jews have said that. Many Jews have suggested that Israel should shut down and go. We never seen any of those people, any of those Jews actually, being chastised. But why is it? Because Helen Thomas of a Lebanese descent, they have to put that ahead as if it was an accusation. Have you noticed those things?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing to consider is that, the press in this country, it can be something of a wild card. Sometimes they work in Israel's favor, and then other times they don't. There's only so far that even the most low-down prostitute is willing to go. Eventually, she will come to a point where she says, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I think they wanted to make an example of Helen Thomas to the rest of the reporters and anybody of any substance out there. They wanted to say, listen, this woman has been sitting in the White House through how many presidents? How many presidents was it? 10 presidents.
10 presidents.
She's been there. She should have gotten a Congressional Medal of Honor. She's been there for almost 60 years. She was in the press corps when you guys were still in diapers. And if we could do this to her with this kind of ease, imagine what we can do to you, Mr. So-and-so reporter from so-and-so newspaper, whatever.
You know something, Mark, when you said Congressional Medal of Honor, I remembered a lady who received a Congressional Medal of Honor while we are talking about the USS Liberty, and that lady's name is Matilda Krim. She was with LBJ when he actually did not allow the United States Air Force or Navy to actually go to help the USS Liberty. She was with him at that time, and she's an Israeli. She served in the Haganah. Her parents served in the Haganah. She married an Israeli, a Jewish billionaire, and she was with LBJ designing and conducting the 1967 war that Israel was involved in. Now, Phil, when you entered the Navy, you wanted to serve the United States of America. And at that time, you were a young man, a very handsome man. I'm looking at your picture on the first page of the book. And you have quite a bit of medals and honors. You have a long line of these things, Presidential Unit Citations. You have the Purple Heart. You have the Vietnam Service Medal with Bronze Star. You have many, many medals. When you went to serve the United States at that time, looking at the United States today, was this really the country that you thought you were serving?
No way, Hashem. I was just a young, snot-nosed kid and knew nothing, and I believed everything my country told me, and absolutely not. This country, even back then, was controlled by the Zionists, and I didn't have a clue. Didn't really understand anything about anything. All I knew is when I put my hand on the Bible and swore to protect this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic, I took that very seriously. But it turns out that you defend not just this country, but the government of Israel also. And one more comment. Earlier you said Israel, about the 400 nuclear weapons. Well, they could give up 400 nuclear weapons because they got 400 more hiding somewhere. So whatever happens with their nuclear weapons, they'll never give up one. But even if they did, they would lie about it and get by with it. That's what I have learned in the past 43 years. You trust no one and verify everything. But with Israel, you cannot verify anything, not even the 9 people that were just killed, and one of them was an American that was executed. He wasn't just shot; he was executed 4 times in the head. Can you imagine, Hashem, 4 times with a bullet in the head? They had a certain anger over this human being, probably because he was an Arab American.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, also at the same time, an American named Emily Henschwitz, 21-year-old American student who was not on top of the flotilla, but she actually was in a demonstration in the West Bank, like the day after the attack on the flotilla, and they shot her in the eye with a canister, with the those smoke bombs canisters. Did you see any of the American news media covering that story?
No, I didn't see anything along those lines. I did read an article in Haaretz today that they made sure to quote her mother as saying that Emily still loves Israel, even though that this happened to her and she lost her eye.
Yeah.
And can you imagine a young woman losing her eye, an art student? But her mother wanted to make sure, at least this is the way Haaretz is telling the story, wanted everyone to understand that Emily still loves Israel. Okay?
Well, if Emily loves Israel, and I don't doubt it, but she knew that Israel was doing something horrible and doing something wrong. And Israel did do something wrong. They killed a lot of people, and they've been killing a lot of people. But we don't hear of that on the news. And this is an excellent example of how the media, how they control things. What they give you is what they want to give you, not what is out there. And this is so outrageous that they will spend all this time and money and hours covering what Helen Thomas, what an 89-year-old said, and forgot about her 58 years of service to this country. And they did not go with the stories that they should be covering, which is also the story that they did not cover which you guys wrote a book about it. You and Phil felt strong enough that you need to write a book about it. Now, Phil, let me go to you first. Tell me, what is it that you want people to know about when you wrote this book? What message you wanted to get out there?
Hashem, the message I wanted to get out there was twofold. First of all, Israel can get by with anything, not almost anything, but anything. They murder Americans on the high seas and get by with it, and our government set us up so they could get by with it, sink our ship, blame it on the Egyptians, and drop a nuclear bomb on Cairo. That's what put my mindset into writing a book and make sure that people knew the truth and how it happened and what I saw that day through my eyes. And Mark and I did this over a period of 8 or 9 months with hours and hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours of work. And I think we come out with a very, very, very good product. And it's called What I Saw That Day, and it's available on Amazon.com. I hope everybody reads it. And one other comment that you made, which really gets me, is Helen Thomas apologized. Well, what has Helen Thomas got to apologize for? She just told the truth. What are they going to do to her? She's 89 years old. She quit her job. And one other thing that I heard just yesterday, Hashem, that was probably going to make you very angry, but I'm sure you heard it before, is that the Rachel Corrie got turned back and towed into court by the government of Israel. And on Fox News, by the way, who else but Fox News? The commentator, I forget his name, but it could have been any number of them because they're all the same, said that Rachel Corrie was accidentally bulldozed by an Israeli bulldozer. And it was very evident that Rachel Corrie was in passive resistance, trying to protect the rights and the freedoms of the Palestinians, and they ran over and flattened her like a pancake. And let's never forget Rachel Corrie and her great strides. But that's what I wanted to get out is the bravery and the courage of people like Rachel Corrie, yourself, Mark Glenn, and so many others that we have on our show, and let America know that, hey, if this doesn't stop soon, we're going to lose our freedoms, we're going to lose our internet access, we're going to lose everything, because that's what they're working on now. And it takes people like us to make sure that doesn't happen. And in my book, it goes in depth to why, the who's, and the what's. And I hope everybody reads it. And I would love to have you give a comment or a review on the book, Hashem, when you get time to read it, if you haven't done it already.
Congressman and author Paul Findlay of Illinois did the following remarks to be presented today.
Okay. I will do that. And now, I read some in the book, and I tried to actually, you described very well the night, that first night when you guys stayed at sea after the attack, because, you mentioned in that everyone was scared, but not scared of the dark. Now, of course, you lost power, and I can imagine what went through your mind and everybody else's that night. I just want you to describe the situation after the attack and when you guys settled down at night, because you really can't move in the dark, total darkness. Tell me about that night very quickly.
Yes, I will. Well, we had auxiliary power and battle lanterns and such as that, and we were trying to patch up the wounded and do operations and plug holes anything we could do just to stay alive. And we were very, very, very concerned that the ship would break apart in the night and we would go down. And
okay,
so
keep going.
We just, I'm sorry, go ahead, Hisham.
No, keep going. We have like, there was an extra sound feed in there.
Okay.
Yeah, we apologize.
Well, we everybody that wasn't doing something, or the walking wounded, or the wounded that couldn't do anything, they would not sleep below decks because they feared the ship was going to break apart, of course. And we also feared the Israelis would come back in the dead of night, because that's when they do their dirty work. Their best deeds are always done at night, where they leave no witnesses, and that was what we thought was going to happen. Especially when we didn't get any help from our own government, when they knew we were under attack. 15 minutes into the attack, we didn't see an American ship for 18 hours after the attack, when help was only 15 minutes away. They never even sent a Piper Cub to help us. They were supposed to send an airplane over to help guide us because our gyro compass was broken, was shot out. We had no way of steering the ship, but only by the stars. We did it as they did hundreds and hundreds of years ago. We steered the ship by the stars. It was just a very, very anxious, terrible, terrible night of grief, heartache, and bewilderment that we were alone.
Okay. Mark, just for those people who did not watch the program last week, can you very briefly tell the story of the USS Liberty, and also tell us why you felt that it is so important to write a book with Phil Turney to tell the story of the USS Liberty? Tell us briefly what the story is.
Okay, I'm going to do it in reverse. I'm going to start with your second question first. The reason that this story is so important, Shem, is because it is not just an event that took place 43 years ago. Okay, what took place last week, where an American citizen was killed in international waters by the Israelis, and the firing of Helen Thomas, and the fact that we have lost 5,000 of our young people fighting these wars for Israel, and the fact that we have gone bankrupt now fighting these wars, all of this stems from what took place on June the 8th, 1967, when Israel got away with murdering 34 Americans in an act of a premeditated act of war against the United States. When she got away with that, she knew she could get away with anything, okay? And she still knows it to this day. What is she planning next? What is the next USS Liberty that is going to take place? This is the problem that we're dealing with. It's not our country anymore. It's not our government anymore. It belongs to someone else. Something that you told me.
Mark, answer this. Why did Israel get away with deliberately killing 34 Americans?
Because we have the best money that Israel, the best government that Israel can buy. That's why. Whether it's Johnson, whether it was McNamara, whether it was the members of Congress, every president, every vice president, every Congress that has come and gone since then, they are in Israel's back pocket, and this is the reason why they got away with it then. Now, the reason they got away with it then is because obviously Johnson was compromised by the fact that he was having an extramarital relationship with Matilda Krim, who was, for all intents and purposes, an Israeli spy. In addition to that, the United States government was up to its eyeballs in this. This was a joint American-Israeli operation. As much as the Israelis were guilty for firing the bullets and the rockets and the torpedoes that killed our guys that day, the United States government was just as guilty because she helped plan it out. And the reason for doing this, obviously, was to blame it on Egypt. That would then lead to an American strike against Egypt that would eventually lead to the destabilization of the Egyptian government and the ousting of Nasser, who was a Soviet ally, the biggest Soviet ally in the region. So the Americans wanted the Soviets out of the Middle East, and they figured that by sinking this ship and blaming it on Egypt, that this was a good excuse to go to war against Egypt.
Well, I mean, you're bringing up an excellent point that could it be that maybe that was plan number 2, just in case if the Egyptians or if the Arabs were or had the upper hand in 1967, just in case if Russians helped the Arabs, then that was a way for America to enter the war by destroying an American ship and blaming it on the Egyptians, because as Phil said last time, and I'm sure he will vouch for that now, that those planes that attacked them, they were unmarked. So to send an unmarked airplane, you're up to no good. Isn't that right, Phil?
Absolutely no good. And the President of the United States had no idea who was attacking us, because we didn't have any idea who was attacking us. And he got on the phone and he personally ordered the airplanes back and said he would not embarrass his allies, and he didn't give a GD. If every sailor aboard that ship died, it made no difference to him. Recall the aircraft, and that's what they did, and they left us out there alone to fend for ourselves, and that's exactly what we did. We fended for ourselves because we never knew if we were ever going to get any help, and that is a fact.
Okay. Now, you did say something last week, and just for those people who did not see the program last week, there was really no investigation that had taken place, and also you guys were told that you are not to speak about this to anyone.
Absolutely. We were ordered by Admiral Isaac Kidd, a flag officer, that we were not allowed to speak to our shipmates, our mother and fathers, our brothers and sisters, any friends, anybody. Talk to no one, or you will end up in the penitentiary or worse. And we all know what worse meant. We thought we were going to get a pat on the back, and we got a kick in the throat, the groin, in the rear end, in the stomach from a flag admiral.
Now,
and we were more afraid then than during the attack.
Mark, Admiral Isaac Kidd, actually he was taking his orders from someone higher than him, and that person is?
The father of the president, senator from Arizona, and one-time presidential candidate John McCain. Admiral John McCain, Jr., who was the commander-in-chief of the European forces, European American Naval Forces. Kidd was ordered by McCain, Sr., in this case, senior to the John McCain we all know, to tell the guys to keep quiet, and then, of course, the investigation that followed that was headed up by Captain Ward Boston. Captain Ward Boston, in his own admission in a legal affidavit that he released, I believe it was in 2003, said that he had been personally ordered to conclude that the attack on the Liberty was just a case of mistaken identity, just a simple little snafu, and then, of course, as I said, he admitted some 35 years later that he had been ordered to do this by persons no less in authority than the President of the United States himself.
So John McCain Sr., who was stationed in London at that time, he summoned Admiral Isaac Kidd and actually told him to wrap it up in 1 week, isn't it?
Phil, why don't you answer that?
Absolutely. An investigation that would take normally 6 months to a year, or maybe 2 years, for the severity of the attack on our ship, took a total of 7 days, if you can believe that. And
especially that Israel at that time was in the middle of a war. So even if you are to put together a team of investigators, they're not going to be able to go to Israel for probably a month or so, because it was in the middle of a war at that time. So John McCain Sr., the father of John McCain, who wanted to be the president of the United States, actually covered up and ordered Isaac Kidd to just come up with a reason and say that it was a mistaken identity. Wasn't that the final result?
Absolutely, and it's still the final result. Case closed, and they lied. In fact, there was a book put out by Michael Oren called The 6 Days of War. He was on television the other day, which he is now the Israeli ambassador to the United States, pumping the same old lie out that, hey, this is a worn-out story. The survivors don't know what they're talking about. Israel investigated it. Well, they're doing the same thing with this Turkish ship and the people they captured. They're investigating themselves. I mean, I'm sure they're going to find themselves guilty of murder. And, I challenge Michael Oren, and I also challenge Judge A.J. Crystal for his book, The Liberty Incident, to meet the Liberty survivors in a forum and hash this out and see who comes up on top. They won't do it because we got them by the cojones because they're all flat liars. And I'm calling the Israeli ambassador of the United States a liar. And I'm also calling A.J. Crystal a liar that wrote a book called The Liberty Incident. They're both liars. And the government of Israel is lying, and the government of the United States is lying. I can't make it any more plainer than that. Lie after lie after lie after lie. Now, if you want to read books that tell the truth, read Guilt by Association by Jeff Gates. They Dare to Speak Out by Paul Finley. What I Saw That Day by Phil Turney and Mark Glenn. Attack on the Liberty by James Scott. Body of Secrets by James Bradford. On and on and on. If you want to get the truth, that's where it's at.
And what's his name? James Ennis, I think he also wrote a book on the liberty. Now, Mark, it's funny that Phil mentioned Michael Oren, the ambassador to the United States, the Israeli ambassador to the United States. I noticed. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, I can barely hear you.
You can barely hear me because they're telling me.
I can. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Apparently, those old wires in the studio probably acted up. He mentioned. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. He mentioned Michael Oren, and Michael actually he speaks like an American. He's an Israeli ambassador. Why? I mean, what are they trying to do here? They're trying to say that hey, look, those Israelis, they're just like us. They look like us. They speak like us. Have the image. Now, what about these other Israelis who don't speak with that kind of accent? I mean, what is the deal here? This is off the subject.
No, it's actually a very good point that you made several years ago that I have never considered, but which I think is brilliant. They always make sure to put somebody out there who's white, who speaks like an American, whose demeanor is typical of Westerners, rather than one of these heavily accented, ethnic-looking Jews from the Soviet Union. They want Americans to see Jews and Christians as basically the same people, fighting for the same values. That way Americans don't question forking over $30 million a day to Israel. They don't question sending their beloved children off to fight and die for Israel's wars, as opposed to, the Arab states, the what we would call, quote-unquote, Israel's enemies. You have these very ethnic-looking, ethnic-sounding people.
And half the times they don't even know how to speak English.
Exactly. So it's a very
PR. It's a PR problem for the Arabs.
Absolutely, and let's face it. I mean, the Jews, they know how to
play the game.
They can sell anything. They know how to play the game. They can sell anything. They are masters at it. They've been doing it for thousands of years.
The Zionists, the Israelis, know how to deceive people. Now, tell us how people can get the book. I'm holding in my hand now a copy of your book, What I Saw That Day, written by Philip Turney, USS Liberty survivor, and Mark Glynn. How can people get this book?
They can go to Amazon.com and simply type in What I Saw That Day and maybe refine their search by adding Phil Turney in. Or they can write, if they don't want to use Amazon, if they want to write to me, Liberty Publications, Box 27, Carywood, Idaho. That's Careywood, Carywood, Idaho 83809.
Very quick. We were completely out of time. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on.
Anytime.
Thank you.